Some predators don't hide in alleys or shadows. Some smile through phone cameras, whisper promises across borders, and wait patiently for the moment a woman lets her guard down. She traveled 3,000 m from Quebec to Texas for love. 2 days later, she woke up on a stained mattress in an unfamiliar motel room. Her vision blurred, her body weak. Her stomach stitched, and one of her kidneys missing. She didn't remember the screams. She didn't remember him lifting her. She didn't remember collapsing. But she remembered the fear. And when she called him, desperate for answers, the man she once imagined she would marry told her calmly, "If you weren't reciting Psalm 23 while unconscious, I would have taken both." She should have died, and every woman after her would have. But she survived. And survival came with a price. A promise she made to herself. He will never touch another woman again. That promise would lead her across states, across months, across the breaking point of her own sanity. And it would end in a New York airport where a man who had stolen lives for profit finally realized he had spared the wrong woman. Welcome to True Crime Story HQ. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for their support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. It is easy to look at someone who makes a dangerous decision and assume desperation drove them to it. It is easy to judge from the outside and think, "I would never do that." But the truth is, it is not desperation that pushes people to take risks with strangers they meet online. It is hope, loneliness, and the simple human need to matter to someone. And in the case of Mattie Bright, it was all of those things combined with a faith that made her believe good things were still possible if she was willing to trust. Mattie was 32 years old when she made the decision that would nearly cost her life. She lived in a small apartment in Quebec, working remotely as a data analyst for a pharmaceutical company. The job paid well, better than most positions she could have landed with her degree. But it came with a price she hadn't anticipated when she accepted the offer 3 years earlier. Her days were predictable in the worst possible way. She woke up at 7, made coffee, logged into her computer by 8, and spent the next 9 hours staring at spreadsheets and patient data reports. Her interactions were limited to emails and the occasional Zoom meeting where everyone kept their cameras off. By the time she closed her laptop at 5 o'clock, she had spoken to no one. The evenings weren't much better. She would take a walk around her neighborhood if the weather was decent, make herself dinner, watch television, and go to bed. Sundays meant church, the one place where she saw actual human faces and heard voices that weren't filtered through speakers. But even there, she felt like an outsider. She would sit in the third pew from the back, sing the hymns, listen to the sermon, shake hands with the pastor on her way out, and drive home alone. It wasn't that people were unkind. It was just that everyone else seemed to have someone. Families sat together. Couples held hands during prayer. Friends gathered in the parking lot after service making plans for lunch. Mattie smiled politely and walked to her car by herself. What made the loneliness worse was watching everyone around her move forward with their lives while she stayed in the same place. Her best friend from college got engaged in the spring. Mattie was asked to be a bridesmaid. She said yes because that's what you do when your friend is happy. But standing at that wedding in a lavender dress she would never wear again. Watching two people promise forever to each other hurt more than she wanted to admit. Her younger cousin had just had her second baby. Her coworker from her last job posted anniversary photos, 5 years married, still smiling at each other like they were newlyweds. Even her neighbor, a woman in her late 50s who had been divorced for a decade, started dating someone she met at a book club. Mattie came home every night to an empty apartment. No messages, no missed calls, no one waiting. She wasn't desperate. That's what she told herself. She had a good life, a stable job, a nice apartment, a car that ran, enough money and savings to feel secure. She wasn't one of those women who needed a man to feel complete. But she was tired. Tired of eating dinner alone. Tired of having no one to talk to about her day. Tired of scrolling through social media and seeing nothing but engagement announcements and vacation photos of happy couples. She wanted what everyone else seemed to have. She wanted someone to call hers. So, she did what millions of people do when they reach that point. She downloaded a dating app. At first, it felt strange. Mattie had never been good at putting herself out there. The idea of summarizing her entire personality in a few sentences and some carefully chosen photos felt forced and uncomfortable, but she filled out the profile anyway. She picked a picture from her cousin's wedding where she actually looked happy. She wrote that she enjoyed reading, going to church, and spending time outdoors. She listed her job and her location. She hit submit and waited. The first few days brought a handful of messages, most of them one-liners that clearly had been copy-pasted to dozens of women. A few bad first dates followed. Men who talked only about themselves. Men who looked nothing like their photos. Men who made it clear within the first 10 minutes that they were only interested in one thing. Mattie started to think maybe this wasn't going to work for her either. Then she matched with Alex Cobbs. His profile was different from the others. It was polished without being flashy. His photos showed a clean-cut man with a warm smile. He wasn't posing shirtless in a bathroom mirror or holding up a fish he'd caught. He looked normal. Approachable, safe. His bio mentioned that he valued faith, family, and fitness. He listed his job as a medical equipment sales consultant based in Austin, Texas. What caught Mattie's attention most was the scripture reference at the bottom of his profile. Proverbs 18 verse 22. She looked it up later that night. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. For a woman who had spent years praying for a partner, it felt like a sign. Alex's first message wasn't like the others she had received. He didn't just say, "Hey, what's up," or ask for her number in the first sentence. He asked about her work. He wanted to know what she did as a data analyst and if she enjoyed it. He complimented her smile in a way that didn't feel creepy. He asked what church she attended and if she had a favorite Bible verse. Mattie found herself typing out long responses. Actually thinking about her answers instead of giving short, polite replies. They talked for weeks, not just messages, actual conversations. He suggested they move to video calls. And when they did, he looked exactly like his photos. He showed her around his apartment. It was modest but clean. He introduced her to his dog, a golden retriever named Samson. He asked about her family, her hobbies, her dreams. He listened when she talked. He sent her flowers on her birthday, delivered right to her door, even though they had never met in person. The card said, "To my future wife, I'm praying for the day we meet." Mattie cried when she read it. Not because it was over the top, but because it was the most thoughtful thing anyone had done for her in years. Alex started calling her that in their conversations. His future wife. At first, it felt fast, but the more they talked, the more natural it seemed. He told her he had been praying for someone like her, someone who valued faith. Someone who wanted a real relationship, not just something casual, someone who understood what it meant to build a life with another person. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. After about a month of talking, Alex started planting the idea. "When are you coming to see me?" he would ask. At first, Mattie laughed it off. 3,000 miles was a long way to travel for someone she had never met in person. What if it was awkward? What if the connection they had online didn't translate to real life? But Alex was patient. He didn't push. He just kept mentioning it, asking if she had ever been to Texas, telling her about places he wanted to take her, restaurants they could try, parks they could visit. Eventually, the idea didn't seem so far-fetched. Maybe it was time to take a chance. Maybe this was what faith looked like. Trusting that something good could come from stepping outside your comfort zone. Mattie told him she was thinking about it, and Alex immediately made it easier for her to say yes. He offered to pay for half of her flight. He promised to pick her up from the airport personally. He sent her his full address, his phone number, and even a photo of the guest room in his apartment where she would stay. "You'll be safe with me," he said. "I promise." Mattie wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. So, she went online, found a flight that worked with her schedule, and booked the ticket. Her hands shook as she entered her credit card information. This was really happening. She was going to meet him. She was going to see if this could turn into something real. But Mattie made one decision that she would regret for the rest of her life. She told no one about the trip. Not her parents, not her sister, not her friends from church. She didn't post about it on social media. She didn't mention it at work. She convinced herself that it was better this way. If things went well, she would tell everyone when she got back. If things didn't work out, no one would know she had taken such a big risk. She didn't want people asking questions or telling her she was being reckless. She didn't want anyone talking her out of it. So, she kept it to herself. She packed her suitcase in private. She left for the airport without telling a soul where she was going. Even when she arrived in Texas, Mattie kept up the act. She texted her family like everything was normal. She sent photos of her work-from-home setup that were actually taken in Alex's apartment. She posted a picture of her coffee on Instagram with a caption about a relaxing week off. No one suspected anything. Why would they? Mattie had always been responsible. She had always made safe choices. There was no reason for anyone to worry. And that was exactly what made her the perfect target. Looking back, Mattie would realize there were signs she missed. Alex never wanted to meet her family on video. Every time she suggested introducing him to her parents or her sister, he had an excuse. He was busy with work. He didn't want to overwhelm them before they had met in person. At the time, it seemed reasonable, but it wasn't. He also never offered to visit her first. When Mattie brought it up once, Alex said his job made it difficult to travel on short notice. He promised that after she visited him, he would make the trip to Quebec. But that trip would never happen. The biggest red flag, the one Mattie would replay in her mind 1,000 times afterward, was the questions he asked about her health. He wanted to know her blood type. He asked if she had ever had surgery. He wanted details about her medical history. Did she smoke? Did she drink? Had she ever had any major illnesses? Mattie thought he was being caring. She thought he wanted to make sure they were compatible in every way. She had no idea that those Questions weren't about care. They were about inventory. Alex wasn't falling in love with her. He was evaluating her. And she had passed every test. There are still more to be revealed, but we invite you to take a moment to give this video a like as we dig deeper. Mattie's flight landed at Austin Bergstrom International Airport on a Thursday afternoon in late September. She had barely slept the night before. Her stomach had been in knots for the entire 3-hour flight. She kept checking her phone, rereading Alex's last message. "Can't wait to see you. I'll be right outside the gate." Now that she was actually here, the nervousness hit her in full force. What if he looked different in person? What if the chemistry they had online didn't exist face to face? What if this entire trip was a mistake? She pulled her carry-on bag behind her as she walked through the terminal, scanning the crowd for a face she had only seen through a screen. Then she saw him. Alex was standing near the arrival gate, holding a bouquet of white roses. He looked exactly like his photos. Same warm smile, same clean-cut appearance, same approachable energy. When their eyes met, his face lit up. He walked toward her with the kind of confidence that made her feel like she had made the right decision. Before Mattie could even say hello, Alex wrapped his arms around her in a hug that felt like they had known each other for years, not weeks. "You're even more beautiful in person," he said, pulling back just enough to look at her. Mattie felt her anxiety melt away. He was real. He was kind. Maybe this really could work. The drive to his apartment took about 20 minutes. Alex talked the entire way, pointing out landmarks and asking about her flight. He wanted to know if she was tired, if she was hungry, if the plane had been crowded. Mattie found herself relaxing into the conversation. He seemed genuinely happy she was there. When they pulled up to his apartment complex, it looked exactly as he had described, a modest building in a quiet neighborhood with a small courtyard and a few trees scattered around the parking lot. Alex grabbed her suitcase from the trunk and led her up to the second floor. His apartment was small but clean. The furniture was basic but organized. Everything seemed normal. Alex set her bag down near the couch and offered her a glass of water. He showed her around the apartment. The kitchen, the bathroom, the guest room where she would be sleeping. He pointed out where he kept extra towels and told her to make herself at home. Mattie appreciated how respectful he was being. He wasn't pushing boundaries. He wasn't making her uncomfortable. After she freshened up, Alex suggested they grab dinner at a nearby restaurant. He said it was his favorite spot and that he had been looking forward to taking her there. Mattie agreed. She was hungry and the idea of getting out and doing something normal sounded good. She wanted this trip to feel like the beginning of something real, not awkward or forced. Dinner was everything Mattie had hoped it would be. The restaurant was small and casual, the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other. Alex was attentive without being overbearing. He asked about her flight, her job, her family. He talked about his work selling medical equipment and mentioned how much he enjoyed his church community. He laughed easily and made her laugh, too. By the time their food arrived, Mattie felt like she was sitting across from someone she had known for months, not someone she was meeting for the first time. This was what she had been hoping for. This was why she had taken the risk. For the first time in a long time, Mattie felt like she wasn't alone. They finished dinner around 8:30 and drove back to the apartment. Alex suggested they watch a movie. Mattie agreed even though she was starting to feel tired from the travel. She sat on the couch while Alex scrolled through streaming options. He asked if she wanted something to drink. And when she said water was fine, he came back with a glass of red wine instead. You sure you don't want to relax a little? He asked with a smile. Mattie hesitated. She wasn't a big drinker. She maybe had a glass of wine at weddings or holidays, but never regularly. Still, she didn't want to seem rude or uptight. Alex had gone out of his way to make her feel welcome. The least she could do was have a drink with him. She took the glass and sipped it slowly while they watched the movie. The wine tasted fine. Nothing unusual. Alex sat on the other side of the couch, keeping a respectful distance. He didn't try to touch her or move closer. Everything felt appropriate, safe. But about 20 minutes into the movie, Mattie started to feel strange. Her head felt heavy. The room seemed to tilt slightly. When she turned to look at Alex, she blinked a few times, trying to clear her vision, but it didn't help. Her limbs felt like they were made of lead. When she tried to set the wine glass down on the coffee table, her hand missed the edge and the glass tipped over, spilling red liquid onto the wood. Are you okay? Alex asked. His voice sounded far away, like he was speaking to her from the other end of a tunnel. Mattie tried to answer, but her words came out slurred and jumbled. She tried to stand up, thinking maybe she just needed to move around or splash some water on her face, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. They buckled beneath her and she fell back onto the couch. The room was spinning now. She couldn't focus on anything. She looked over at Alex trying to ask him what was happening, but he wasn't moving. He was just sitting there watching her. His face had changed. The warmth was gone. The smile was gone. He looked calm, detached, clinical, like he was observing something he had expected to happen. Mattie's last conscious thought was that something was very, very wrong. She tried to reach for her phone, but her arm wouldn't move. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Alex's face, still expressionless, still watching. Then nothing. For the next 2 days, Mattie's body existed in a nightmare her mind couldn't record. She didn't remember Alex lifting her off the couch and carrying her to his car. She didn't remember the drive to the motel on the outskirts of Austin, the one he had paid for in cash under a fake name. She didn't remember being laid on a plastic sheet on the floor. She didn't remember the cold metal table he placed her on afterward. She didn't remember the scalpel cutting into her skin. She didn't remember the pain of the incision being made. She didn't remember the hands pulling her kidney from her body. She didn't remember the amateur stitching that followed. She didn't remember being moved back to the motel room. She didn't remember the 2 days she spent unconscious, bleeding, alone. After what seemed like eternity, Mattie's eyes fluttered open to a ceiling she didn't recognize. It was stained yellow with water damage and peeling paint. She blinked a few times, trying to focus, trying to remember where she was. The last thing she could recall was sitting on Alex's couch watching a movie, feeling dizzy. Everything after that was blank. Her head felt like it was filled with cotton. Her mouth was dry. Her entire body felt wrong. She tried to move and that's when the pain hit her. A sharp, burning sensation that ripped through her abdomen like someone had set her insides on fire. She gasped and looked down. Her shirt was gone. In its place was a crude bandage taped across her lower stomach. The bandage was soaked through with blood. Dark red stains spreading across the white gauze. Mattie's heart started racing. What happened to her? Where was she? She turned her head slowly, fighting through the fog in her brain, and realized she was lying on a mattress on the floor. There was no bed frame. No sheets, just a bare stained mattress in what looked like a cheap motel room. The walls were thin. She could hear traffic outside. The hum of cars passing by, the distant sound of someone shouting. Panic started to creep in. Mattie tried to sit up, but the moment she moved, the pain became unbearable. She fell back onto the mattress, breathing hard, tears stinging her eyes. She was too weak. Her body wouldn't cooperate. She turned her head to the side and saw her phone lying on the floor just a few inches away. It might as well have been a mile. She reached out her arm, stretching as far as she could, every movement sending waves of agony through her stomach. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the phone. She stretched further, biting down on her lip to keep from crying out, and finally grabbed it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock the screen. She pulled up Alex's contact and hit call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. Mattie's breath caught in her throat. She tried again. Same result. No answer. Where was he? Why wasn't he picking up? She looked down at the bandage again. Blood was still seeping through. Whatever had happened to her, it was bad. She needed help. She needed someone to tell her what was going on. Her fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before she did the only thing she could think of. She dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? The voice was calm, professional, but Mattie could barely get the words out. Her voice came out as a whisper, broken and weak. I need help. I don't know where I am. I'm bleeding. I think something happened to me. The operator asked her to describe her location, but Mattie didn't know. She had no idea where she was. She forced herself to move, dragging her body toward the window. Every inch was excruciating. She gritted her teeth and pulled herself up just enough to peer outside. Across the parking lot, she saw a faded sign, Lone Star Motel. She squinted at the smaller text below it and read the address out loud to the operator, her voice shaking. Stay on the line, the operator said. Help is on the way. 12 minutes later, paramedics broke into the motel room. They found Mattie barely conscious, lying in a pool of her own blood. One of them knelt beside her and checked her pulse while the other examined the bandage on her stomach. Jesus Christ, one of them muttered. This is a surgical incision. They worked quickly, asking her questions she couldn't fully answer. What's your name? How old are you? Do you know what happened? Mattie tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Everything was too heavy, too confusing. They loaded her onto a stretcher and rushed her to the ambulance. The ride to Del Tin Medical Center was a blur. Mattie drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the siren above her and the voices of the paramedics speaking in urgent tones. In the emergency room, Dr. Felix Harding took one look at Mattie's abdomen and knew this wasn't an accident. He had been an ER doctor for 15 years. He had seen gunshot wounds, stab wounds, car accident injuries, but this was different. The incision was clean, deliberate, but the stitching was amateur. Whoever had done this had surgical knowledge, but not professional training. He carefully removed the bandage, and Mattie winced at the pain. The wound underneath was red and inflamed. Infection was already setting in. Dr. Harding ordered an immediate CT scan. He needed to know what they were dealing with. 30 minutes later, the results came back. Dr. Harding stood in front of the monitor, staring at the images in disbelief. He had suspected something was missing based on the location of the incision, but seeing it confirmed on the screen was different. He walked back to Mattie's bed, where she was lying with her eyes half closed, too exhausted to keep them open. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her. His expression was grim. "Miss Bright," he said gently, "I need to tell you something very difficult." Mattie's eyes opened slowly. She looked at him, waiting. "What?" she whispered. Dr. Harding hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Your left kidney is missing. It's been surgically removed. This wasn't a medical procedure. This was done illegally." Mattie stared at him. She heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Missing, surgically removed. She tried to sit up, but the pain forced her back down. "What do you mean missing?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Someone took it," Dr. Harding said quietly. "You've been the victim of organ theft." The room started to tilt. Mattie couldn't breathe. Her chest felt tight. Her vision blurred. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. 2 hours later, her phone rang. Mattie was still in the hospital bed, hooked up to N4, her mind racing with questions she didn't have answers to. She looked at the screen. It was Alex. Her hands shook as she picked up the phone and answered. "Alex." Her voice cracked. "Where are you? What happened to me?" There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice came through. Calm, cold, emotionless. "You're awake. Good." Mattie's stomach dropped. Something in his tone was wrong. "What did you do to me?" she asked, her voice rising. "I did what I had to do," Alex said simply. Mattie felt like she was going to be sick. "You took my kidney," she whispered. "One of them?" "Yes." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. She couldn't process it, couldn't understand it. "Why?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "Because you were perfect," Alex said. His voice flat. "Healthy, the right blood type, and because you trusted me." Mattie sobbed into the phone. "How could you?" But Alex cut her off. "If you weren't reciting Psalm 23 while you were unconscious," he said, "would have taken both." The line went dead. Mattie sat there in the hospital bed, trembling, the phone still pressed to her ear. She stared at the screen, at his name, at the call that had just ended. She should be dead. That's what he was saying. She should be dead right now, with both kidneys gone, left to bleed out in that motel room. The only reason she was alive was because of something she didn't even remember doing. Because she had prayed in her sleep. Because somewhere in the darkness of unconsciousness, her mind had reached for the one thing that had always brought her comfort. Scripture. And that had been enough to make him stop. Mattie lay back against the pillow, her body shaking with sobs she couldn't control. She was alive. But at what cost? Part of her was gone, taken by a man she had trusted, a man she had flown 3,000 miles to meet, a man she had believed was her future. And now she was lying in a hospital bed in a city she didn't know, with a wound that would never fully heal. Trying to understand how her life had turned into a nightmare in less than 48 hours. She closed her eyes, but all she could see was Alex's face. Calm. Detached, watching her collapse. She would never forget that look, and she would never forgive herself for not seeing it coming. The day after Mattie regained enough strength to speak coherently, a police officer came to her hospital room. He introduced himself as Detective Raymond Torres from the Austin Police Department. He pulled up a chair beside her bed and took out a notepad. His face was kind but tired, the face of someone who had seen too much and expected too little. Mattie told him everything. She told him about meeting Alex online, about flying to Texas. About the wine that made her dizzy, about waking up in the motel room with her kidney gone. She told him about the phone call where Alex admitted what he had done. Detective Torres listened without interrupting, writing down notes as she spoke. When she finished, he set his pen down and looked at her with an expression that made her stomach sink. "Miss Bright, I believe you," he said. "I want you to know that, but without physical evidence tying him to the surgery, it's your word against his." Mattie stared at him, confused. "He admitted it," she said, her voice rising. "He told me he took my kidney. He said if I hadn't been praying, he would have taken both." Detective Torres nodded slowly. "Did you record the call?" Mattie's heart dropped. She hadn't. It hadn't even occurred to her. She had been too shocked, too scared, too overwhelmed to think about recording anything. "No," she whispered. "Detective Torres sighed. "We'll try to locate him. We'll run his name, check his address, see what we can find. But men like this, they move fast. They use fake names, fake addresses. They don't leave trails." Mattie felt tears stinging her eyes. "So he's just going to get away with this?" she asked, her voice breaking. Detective Torres looked at her with something close to pity. "I'm saying it's going to be very difficult to prosecute without more evidence. We'll do what we can, but I need you to be prepared for the possibility that this won't end the way you want it to." Mattie nodded, but she didn't really hear him anymore. The words were just noise. She understood what he was telling her. Alex Cobbs was going to walk free. He was going to do this to someone else and there was nothing she could do to stop him. Detective Torres left her his card and told her to call if she remembered anything else. Then he left. Mattie sat alone in the hospital room staring at the wall, feeling more helpless than she had ever felt in her life. 5 days after waking up, Mattie was discharged from the hospital. The doctors had done what they could. They had treated the infection, closed the wound properly, given her pain medication and antibiotics. They told her she would need to follow up with a nephrologist in Quebec to monitor her remaining kidney. They told her she was lucky to be alive. Lucky. Mattie didn't feel lucky. She felt hollow. She booked a flight back to Quebec for the next day. She didn't want to spend another minute in Texas. She didn't want to see the city where this had happened. She didn't want to think about the motel room or the hospital or the police station. She just wanted to go home. The journey back was a blur. Mattie sat in the airport terminal staring at nothing. People walked past her pulling suitcases, holding coffee cups, talking on their phones. Life was continuing for everyone else. But for Mattie, everything had stopped. On the plane, she pressed her hand against her abdomen, feeling the stitches beneath her clothes. Part of her was gone, taken, sold, and the man who had done it was still out there. Living his life, probably already planning his next victim. The thought made her sick. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But every time she drifted off, she saw Alex's face, calm, cold, watching her collapse. When Mattie finally arrived back in Quebec, she went straight to her apartment and locked the door for 2 days. She didn't leave. She didn't answer calls. She didn't respond to texts. She just sat on her couch staring at the wall, trying to make sense of what had happened. On the 3rd day, her sister showed up at her door, banging. Until Mattie finally opened it. Her sister took one look at her and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. Mattie broke down. She told her everything. The trip to Texas, the man she had met online, the drugging, the surgery, the missing kidney. Her sister's face went from concern to horror to disbelief. "Why didn't you tell anyone you were going?" she asked, her voice shaking. Mattie didn't have an answer. She just shook her head and cried. Her parents came over that night, then her friends. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Why hadn't she told them? Why had she kept this a secret? Mattie felt the shame crush her. She had been so stupid, so naive. She had trusted a stranger and nearly died because of it. And now everyone knew. Everyone was looking at her like she was broken, like she was a victim. And maybe she was. But that didn't make it any easier to accept. Her mother hugged her and told her it wasn't her fault. Her father said he would find a lawyer, that they would make sure Alex paid for what he did. But Mattie knew better. She had already heard what Detective Torres said. There was no evidence, no case, no justice. Mattie tried to return to normal. She went back to work, logging into her computer and staring at spreadsheets like nothing had happened. She attended church on Sundays, sitting in the same pew she always sat in, singing the same hymns. She had dinner with her family. She answered texts from friends, but nothing was the same. She couldn't sleep without seeing his face. Some nights she woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, her hand instinctively going to her abdomen to make sure she was still whole. Other nights, she didn't sleep at all. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of that trip. Looking for the signs she had missed. She couldn't eat without feeling nauseous. Food tasted like nothing. She forced herself to eat because she knew she had to. But every meal felt like a chore. She couldn't be around men without flinching. Even her father, even her brother-in-law. If a man stood too close to her in the grocery store, her heart would race. If a man smiled at her on the street, she would look away, her body going rigid with fear. She knew it wasn't rational. She knew not every man was Alex, but her body didn't care. Her body remembered what had happened and it refused to trust again. Her sister convinced her to see a therapist. Mattie didn't want to. She didn't want to sit in a room and talk about what had happened. She didn't want to relive it, but she went anyway. Because she didn't know what else to do. The therapist listened to her story and diagnosed her with PTSD, severe anxiety, and depression. She prescribed medication and scheduled weekly sessions. Mattie took the pills and attended the appointments, but she didn't feel any better. She felt numb, empty, like part of her had died in that motel room, and she was just going through the motions of being alive. 6 months after the attack, Mattie was sitting in her apartment at 2 o'clock in the morning, unable to sleep. She had tried everything: meditation, breathing exercises, sleeping pills. Nothing worked. Her mind wouldn't shut off. She kept thinking about Alex, about what he had done to her, about what he was probably doing right now. Was he messaging another woman? Was he planning another trip? Was someone else about to make the same mistake she had made? The thought made her sick. She got up and walked to her desk. She opened her laptop and typed Alex Cobbs into the search bar. At first, nothing came up. His dating profile was gone. His social media accounts had been deleted or made private. It was like he had vanished. But Mattie didn't stop. She searched for hours, clicking through page after page, looking for any trace of him. And that's when something shifted inside her. She realized she had a choice. She could let this destroy her. She could spend the rest of her life afraid, broken, waiting for the nightmares to stop. Or she could do something. She could make sure Alex never did this to anyone else. She didn't know how yet. She didn't know if it was even possible. But for the first time since waking up in that motel room, Mattie felt something other than fear. She felt anger. And anger, she realized, was better than nothing. Mattie started small. She didn't have training in investigation. She didn't have connections in law enforcement. All she had was time, a laptop, and a determination that bordered on obsession. She searched for Alex Cobbs on every platform she could think of: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, dating apps. His original profile was gone. The one she had matched with, the one that had quoted scripture and talked about faith and family, had been deleted. But Mattie knew how the internet worked. Nothing ever really disappeared. She just had to dig deeper. After hours of searching, she found fragments, an old LinkedIn page under the name Alex Cobbs, but the company he listed was different from what he had told her. The profile hadn't been updated in 2 years. The photo was older, but it was him. She saved the page. Then she found a Facebook account under the name Alex Cobb. No, at the end. The profile was sparse, only a few posts, all generic. A photo of a sunset, a quote about perseverance, but the profile picture was the same man, same smile, same eyes. Mattie's stomach turned. She took screenshots of everything, every photo, every post, every detail she could find. She created a folder on her computer and labeled it evidence. She kept digging. She ran reverse image searches on his photos. She searched for phone numbers associated with his accounts. One number came up linked to a burner email address. One of those temporary accounts people use when they don't want to be traced. Mattie wrote it all down. She didn't know what any of it meant yet. But she knew it mattered. Over the next 3 months, she uncovered a pattern. Alex wasn't just using one fake name. He was using several. She found profiles under Alexander Cole, Alec Robbins, and Aaron Colby. Each profile had slight variations. Different cities, different jobs, different interests, but the photos were always similar, sometimes the same. And the approach was always the same. Every profile targeted women. On Christian dating sites. Every profile mentioned working in medical sales. Every profile quoted scripture. Mattie felt sick as she scrolled through the profiles. He had done this before. Maybe dozens of times, maybe more. She printed out every profile she found and taped them to the wall of her apartment. She drew lines between them, connecting the names, the photos, the dates. It looked like something out of a crime show. But Mattie didn't care. She needed to see it. She needed to understand how he operated. And the more she uncovered, the clearer the pattern became. Alex Cobbs, or whatever his real name was a professional. He knew how to find vulnerable women. He knew how to gain their trust, and he knew how to disappear when he was done. Mattie decided to dig deeper. She started searching for missing person, Reports in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana, the states where Alex's profiles were most active. She spent hours on websites dedicated to missing persons, scrolling through photos and descriptions, looking for any connection. And then she found them. 3 women who had disappeared after meeting men online. Belle Washington, 29, was last seen in Houston. Her family reported her missing after she didn't show up for her mother's birthday dinner. The last text she sent said she was meeting someone she had been talking to online. Shayna Mitchell, 34, vanished in Dallas. Her car was found abandoned in a motel parking lot. Her phone was turned off. Her bank account hadn't been accessed in weeks. Tamika Green, 31, disappeared in San Antonio. Her roommate told police she had been excited about meeting a man she met on a dating app. She never came home. Mattie read every article she could find. She looked at their photos, smiling, hopeful, alive. She read the comments from family members begging for information. She saw the desperation in their words. The years of wondering, the lack of answers. And then she noticed something. All 3 women were last active on dating apps. All 3 had matched with men who claimed to work in medical sales. All 3 had been in Texas. Mattie's hands shook as she wrote down the details. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a pattern. Alex had done this before. And these women, Belle, Shayna, Tamika, they hadn't survived. Mattie created a spreadsheet. She listed every detail she could find: dates, locations, phone numbers, names, physical descriptions. She cross-referenced everything. She compared the timelines of the women's disappearances with the activity on Alex's profiles. The connections were undeniable. When Belle went missing, one of Alex's profiles was active in Houston. When Shayna disappeared, another profile was active in Dallas. When Tama vanished, he had been using a profile based in San Antonio. Mattie stared at the spreadsheet, her heart pounding. She had proof. Not the kind of proof that would hold up in court. Not yet, but proof that Alex Cobbs was responsible for more than just what he had done to her. Her life became the investigation. She stopped going to work. She called in sick for a week, then another week, then eventually just stopped showing up. Her boss called and left voicemails asking if she was okay. Mattie didn't respond. She couldn't focus on spreadsheets and data reports when there were women who had been murdered and families who deserved answers. She used her savings to book flights. She traveled to Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. She visited the places where the women were last seen. She talked to their families, showing them the profile she had found, asking if they recognized the man in the photos. Some did, others weren't sure. But every conversation gave Mattie more information, more pieces of the puzzle. In Houston, Belle's mother broke down when Mattie showed her the photo of Alex. "That's him," she said, her voice shaking. "That's the man my daughter was talking to. She showed me his picture. She said he seemed like a good Christian man." Mattie felt tears sting her eyes. She took notes. She asked for any messages or emails Belle might have saved. The mother didn't have any, but she gave Mattie the name of Belle's best friend. Who might? Mattie called the friend that same day. The friend had screenshots. She sent them to Mattie. The messages were almost identical to the ones Mattie had received. The same compliments, the same scripture references, the same promises of safety. Mattie's friends started to worry about her. They called and texted asking if she was okay, telling her she needed to Take care of herself. Her sister showed up at her apartment one day and found the walls covered in photos and notes. And printouts. What are you doing? Her sister asked, her voice filled with concern. I'm finding him, Mattie said. I'm making sure he doesn't do this to anyone else. Her sister looked at her like she was losing her mind. Mattie, you need to let the police handle this. You're going to drive yourself insane. But Mattie shook her head. The police aren't doing anything. I'm the only one who cares enough to stop him. Her family begged her to stop. They said she was obsessed. They said she needed therapy, medication, rest. They said she was destroying herself. And maybe they were right. Mattie wasn't eating regularly. She wasn't sleeping. She had dark circles under her eyes and had lost weight, but she couldn't stop. Every day Alex was free was another day a woman was in danger. Every day he wasn't caught was another day he could drug someone, cut them open, and take what didn't belong to him. Mattie couldn't live with that. She had survived, but that survival meant nothing if she didn't use it to save someone else. As Mattie continued her research, she started to notice something else. Alex wasn't working alone. There were gaps in the timeline, times when he couldn't have been in two places at once, but his profiles were active in both locations. There were references in some of the messages to a colleague or a partner. Mattie found mentions of other people involved in logistics, someone who helped arrange meetings, someone who provided locations, someone who transported the organs after they were taken. It wasn't just one predator. It was a network, a system, and Alex was just one part of it. Mattie felt the weight of that realization settle over her. She wasn't just up against one man. She was up against an organization. People who scouted victims. People who provided safe houses and motel rooms. People who stitched up the survivors and disposed of the bodies of those who didn't make it. People who sold kidneys, livers, hearts to buyers who didn't ask questions. This was bigger than she had imagined. And for the first time since she started her investigation, Mattie felt afraid. Not for herself. She had already lost part of herself, but afraid that she wouldn't be able to stop them. That no matter how much evidence she gathered, it wouldn't be enough. But she didn't stop. She couldn't because somewhere out there, another woman was swiping through profiles looking for connection. And Alex was waiting. 8 months into her investigation, Mattie finally found what she had been looking for. She was sitting at her kitchen table at 3 o'clock in the morning, scrolling through a faith-based dating app she had never heard of before. She had created fake profiles on dozens of apps by now, using different names and photos just to monitor activity. And then she saw him. A profile under the name Aaron Colby. The photo was slightly different, taken from a different angle, maybe a few years older, but it was him. Same smile. Same eyes. Mattie's heart started pounding. She clicked on the profile and read the bio. Medical equipment consultant, Austin, Texas. Loved faith, family, and helping others. Proverbs 3 verse 5 listed at the bottom. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Mattie felt sick. He was still doing it. Still hunting. She scrolled through his recent activity and noticed he was messaging someone, a woman. Mattie clicked on the woman's profile. Her name was Naomi Young, 28 years old, recently divorced, living in Brooklyn, New York. Her profile said she was looking for something real, someone who valued faith and honesty. Mattie's stomach dropped. Naomi had no idea what she was walking into. Mattie spent the next 3 weeks monitoring their conversation. She created another fake profile so she could follow Aaron KBY's activity without him knowing. She watched him build the same trap he had built for her. The compliments came first. "You have a beautiful smile. Your faith really shines through in your profile." Then the personal questions. "What church do you go to? What do you do for work? What are you looking for in a partner?" Naomi responded to everything. She seemed hopeful, excited. She told him about her divorce, about how hard it had been, about how she was ready to move forward and find someone who valued the same things she did. Aaron, Alex, whatever his real name was, told her exactly what she wanted to hear. He said he had been praying for someone like her. He said he believed God brought people together for a reason. He quoted scripture in his messages. He sent her encouragement when she said she was having a bad day. And then after 2 weeks of building trust, he made his move. "Why don't you fly down to meet me? I'd love to take you to dinner. Show you around Austin. I'll pick you up from the airport. You'll be safe with me. I promise." Mattie read the message and felt her chest tighten. It was the exact same line he had used on her. Word for word. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't sit back and watch another woman make the same mistake she had made. Mattie found Naomi's social media accounts and sent her a direct message. Her hands were shaking as she typed. "Please don't meet Aaron Colby. He's dangerous. I'm a survivor. He drugged me and took my kidney. Please call me. I can explain everything." She hit send and waited. Minutes turned into hours. No response. Mattie sent another message. "I know this sounds crazy, but I'm telling the truth. Please just talk to me before you go." Still nothing. Over the next few days, Mattie sent multiple messages. She begged Naomi to listen. She offered to send proof, hospital records, police reports, photos of her scar, but Naomi didn't respond. And then one morning, Mattie tried to send another message and realized she had been blocked. Naomi thought she was a crazy person, maybe even a jealous ex. Mattie felt helpless. She stared at the screen, trying to figure out what to do next. She couldn't just let this happen. She couldn't let another woman get hurt. That's when she realized she needed law enforcement. She couldn't do this alone anymore. Mattie called the New York Police Department. She was transferred 3 times before she finally reached someone who would listen. A detective named Lauren Smith answered. Mattie explained the situation as calmly as she could, but even as she said the words out loud, she knew how insane it sounded. "I'm calling because a man in Texas is planning to meet a woman in New York, and I believe he's going to drug her and harvest her organs." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?" Detective Smith asked. Mattie took a deep breath. "A man who goes by multiple names. Alex Cobbs, Aaron Colby, and others has been targeting women on dating apps. He lures them to meet him, drugs them, and takes their organs. He did it to me 8 months ago in Texas. And now he's doing it to a woman named Naomi Young in New York." Detective Smith's tone shifted slightly. She was listening now, but Mattie could hear the skepticism. "You're saying a man in Texas is planning to meet a woman in New York to harvest her organs?" she asked. "Yes," Mattie said firmly. "Because he did it to me." Detective Smith asked Mattie to come to the precinct. Mattie Booked a flight to New York that same day. She brought everything she had. Hospital records from Delayton Medical Center, screenshots of Alex's profiles, the spreadsheet she had created with the missing women's information, police reports from Austin, photos of her scar, the messages between Aaron Colby and Naomi Young. She laid it all out on Detective Smith's desk. Detective Smith sat down and started going through the documents. Her expression changed as she read. She picked up the hospital report and studied it. Then she looked at the screenshots of the dating profiles. She cross-referenced the names and the timelines. After about 20 minutes, she looked up at Mattie. "Wait here," she said. She left the room and came back 10 minutes later with 2 other detectives. They asked Mattie to go through everything again. She did. She answered every question they had. She showed them the connections between the profiles and the missing women. She explained how she had been monitoring Aaron K's activity 4 weeks. She told them about Naomi Young and the messages she had tried to send. Within 48 hours, the NYPD coordinated with the FBI. They ran background checks on all the names Mattie had provided. They confirmed that Aaron Colby had booked a flight to New York. They confirmed that Naomi Young had purchased a ticket to meet him at JFK Airport. The meeting was scheduled for 3 days from now. Detective Smith called Mattie and asked her to come back to the precinct. When Mattie arrived, there were federal agents in the room. They had set up a full operation, surveillance at the airport, plainclothes officers, a team ready to move. In the moment Alex made contact with Naomi. And they wanted Mattie there. If he sees you, it could spook him into running. Detective Smith explained. But it could also confirm his identity. We need to be absolutely sure this is the same man before we move in. Mattie didn't hesitate. "I'll be there," she said. She had spent 8 months tracking him, 8 months gathering evidence, 8 months living with the fear that he was out there hurting other women. This was her chance to stop him. This was her chance to make sure no one else ended up in a motel room, bleeding and alone, missing part of themselves. Detective Smith nodded. "We'll brief you on the plan, but I need you to understand. This is dangerous. If he recognizes you, we don't know how he'll react." Mattie looked Detective Smith in the eye. "I don't care," she said. "He took part of me. He tried to kill me, and he's going to do it again if we don't stop him. I'll do whatever it takes." The agents exchanged glances. They could see the determination in Mattie's face. This wasn't just about justice for her. This was personal. This was survival. And Mattie had already proven she was willing to fight for it. They spent the next 2 days preparing. They reviewed the plan over and over. They showed Mattie photos of the airport layout. They explained where she would stand, where the officers would be positioned, what to do if Alex tried to run. Mattie absorbed every detail. She didn't sleep the night before. She sat in her hotel room staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was about to happen. The next morning, Mattie stood in front of the mirror and looked at herself. She hadn't seen Alex in 8 months. She had lost weight. Her face was thinner. There were dark circles under her eyes. But she was still here. She was still alive. And she was about to come face to face with the man who had tried to make sure she wasn't. She took a deep breath, grabbed her jacket, and headed to the airport. This was it. The moment she had been working toward for 8 months, the moment that would decide whether another woman lived or died. Mattie wasn't scared anymore. She was ready. At JFK Airport, Terminal 4. On a fateful Wednesday afternoon, the terminal was packed with travelers dragging suitcases, families saying goodbye, business people rushing to catch flights. Plainclothes officers were positioned throughout the terminal by the coffee shop near the restrooms, standing casually by the windows pretending to check their phones. To anyone else, they looked like regular passengers. But Mattie knew exactly where each one was standing. She had memorized the plan. She knew the signals. She knew what to do if something went wrong. Now all she had to do was wait. Mattie stood near the arrival gate, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low over her face. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She hadn't seen Alex in 10 months. 10 months since she woke up in that motel room. 10 months since she heard his voice on the phone admitting what he had done. 10 months since her life had been torn apart. But she would never forget his face. She had seen it every night in her nightmares. She had stared at his photos for hours while building her case. She knew every detail. The shape of his smile, the way his eyes looked when he lied, the calm expression he wore when he watched her collapse. She would know him anywhere. At 3:47 p.m., passengers started filing off the plane. Mattie's breath caught in her chest. She scanned every face, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. And then she saw him. Alex stepped into the terminal carrying a bouquet of yellow roses. He was smiling, that same warm, approachable smile he had worn when he picked her up from the airport in Austin. He looked relaxed, confident, like he didn't have a care in the world, like he wasn't about to drug and mutilate another woman. Mattie felt rage flood through her body. He was here. He was real, and he had no idea what was waiting for him. Alex scanned the crowd, looking for Naomi. His eyes moved from face to face, searching for the woman he had spent weeks manipulating. And then his gaze landed on Mattie. For a split second, nothing happened. He just looked at her like she was another stranger in the terminal. But then recognition flashed across his face. His smile faltered. His eyes widened slightly. Confusion. Then fear. He took a step back, his head turning as if he was trying to figure out if what he was seeing was real. Mattie didn't move. She just stood there, staring at him, letting him see her, letting him know that she was alive. That she had survived, that she had found him. Alex turned to leave. He moved quickly, clutching the roses, his eyes darting toward the exit. But before he could take more than a few steps, federal agents closed in from every direction. 2 men in suits appeared on either side of him. One of them held up a badge. Alex Cobbs, FBI. Don't move. Alex froze. His face went pale. The roses fell from his hand and scattered on the floor. He looked around, realizing he was surrounded. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. For the first time since Mattie had met him, Alex looked scared. Mattie stepped forward and removed her sunglasses. She wanted him to see her face. She wanted him to know that this was because of her, that she was the reason he was about to lose everything. Alex stared at her, his mouth opening slightly like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. The terminal noise faded into the background. For a long moment, there was only silence between them. Mattie could see his mind working, trying to figure out how this had happened, how she had found him, how she had survived long enough to ruin him. Then Alex's expression changed. The fear disappeared. Something cold and hateful took its place. He looked at Mattie with the same detached calm he had worn when he watched her collapse on his couch. "I regretted keeping you alive," he said quietly, his voice flat. "Biggest mistake of my life." The words hung in the air. The agents beside him stiffened, their hands moving toward their weapons, ready to react if he tried anything. But Mattie didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She held his gaze and spoke in a voice that was steady and strong. "You're right," she said. It was. The agents moved in. One of them grabbed Alex's arm and pulled it behind his back. The other did the same with the other arm. They cuffed him, the metal clicking into place with a sound that felt final. Alex didn't resist. He just kept staring at Mattie, his face twisted with anger and something that looked like disbelief. The agent started leading him away, their hands firm on his shoulders. Mattie watched as they walked him through the terminal. People stopped and stared. Some pulled out their phones to record. Others whispered to each other, trying to figure out what was happening. Mattie didn't care. She just stood there watching Alex disappear into the crowd, knowing that this time he wouldn't escape. 30 minutes later, Naomi Young arrived at the terminal. She was wearing a sundress and carrying a small overnight bag. She looked nervous but excited. She scanned the crowd looking for Aaron Colby. Looking for the man she thought was going to take her to dinner and show her around Austin. Looking for the man who had promised her safety. Instead, she was met by two NYPD officers who approached her calmly and asked her to come with them. Naomi's face filled with confusion. "What's going on?" she asked. "Is something wrong?" One of the officers smiled gently. "You're not in trouble, but we need to talk to you. It's important." They escorted Naomi into a private room away from the terminal. Detective Lauren Smith was waiting inside. Naomi sat down, her hands gripping the straps of her bag, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What's happening? Where's Aaron?" she asked. Detective Smith sat across from her and took a deep breath. "Ms. Young, the man you came here to meet is not who you think he is. His real name is Alex Cobbs, and he's been arrested by the FBI. He was planning to drug you, take you to a secondary location, and remove one or both of your kidneys to sell on the black market." Naomi stared at her. The words didn't seem to register at first. She shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "That can't be right. He's a good person. We've been talking for weeks. He goes to church. He..." Detective Smith cut her off gently. "I know this is hard to hear, but we have evidence, hospital records, missing person reports, testimonies from families of women who disappeared after meeting him online. And we have a survivor. She's the reason we were able to stop him before he hurt you." Naomi's face went pale. "A survivor?" she whispered. Detective Smith nodded. "She's here. Would you like to meet her?" The door opened and Mattie walked in. Naomi looked up at her, tears already streaming down her face. Mattie looked tired, worn down, but there was something strong in her expression. Something that told Naomi she had been through hell and come out the other side. Naomi stood up, her legs shaking. You're the one who stopped him?" she asked, her voice breaking. Mattie nodded. "I tried to message you. I tried to warn you, but you didn't believe me." Naomi's face crumpled. "I thought you were crazy. I thought you were just, I don't know, jealous or something. I blocked you." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I was going to meet him. I was going to get in his car. I was going to trust him. Mattie stepped forward and knelt beside Naomi's chair. She reached out and gently touched her arm. You're safe now, she said quietly. He can't hurt you. He can't hurt anyone. Anymore. Naomi looked at her through tears. Why did you do this? Why did you spend so much time trying to find him? Mattie's voice was steady. But there was emotion behind it. Raw and real. Because I made a promise. The day I woke up in that hospital and realized what he had done to me. I promised myself that he would never touch another woman again. And he won't. Naomi reached out and grabbed Mattie's hand, squeezing it tight. You saved my life, she whispered. Mattie squeezed back. I survived so you could, she said. The two women sat there for a moment. Connected by a trauma that Naomi would never fully experience, but would carry with her for the rest of her life. Detective Smith watched from the side of the room, her expression somber. She had been a detective for 12 years. She had seen a lot of cases, but this one was different. This one had been solved not because of law enforcement, but because of a survivor who refused to let her trauma win. A woman who had turned her pain into purpose. And because of that, another woman got to go home. Outside the room, in a holding area, Alex Cobb sat in handcuffs, waiting to be transported. He stared at the wall, his face blank. He didn't look regretful. He didn't look guilty. He just looked like a man who had been caught. And for the first time in his life, there was no way out. Alex Cobb was taken into custody immediately after his arrest at JFK Airport. He was transported to a federal holding facility where investigators attempted to interrogate him. Alex refused to speak without a lawyer. He sat in the interrogation room with his arms crossed, staring at the wall, saying nothing. But the investigators didn't need his confession. The evidence they were about to uncover would speak louder than anything he could say. Within hours of his arrest, a search warrant was executed on Alex's apartment in Austin, Texas. What they found inside was enough to confirm everything Mattie had been saying for the past 8 months. The apartment looked normal at first glance, clean, organized, nothing out of place. But when investigators opened the closet in the bedroom, they found a locked metal case. Inside were medical tools, scalpels, forceps, surgical thread, syringes, vials of sedatives. In the kitchen, hidden behind cleaning supplies under the sink, they found a medical-grade cooler designed for organ transport. It still had ice packs inside. In the desk drawer, they found fake IDs under multiple names. Alex Cobb, Alexander Cole, Alec Robbins, Aaron Colby. Each ID had a different address, but the photo was always the same. And then they found the laptop. The laptop was password protected, but federal investigators broke through the encryption within a day. What they found made everyone in the room go silent. There were files containing names, photos, and detailed medical information of over 30 women. Blood types, medical histories, home addresses, work schedules, phone numbers, travel patterns. Each woman had been researched, tracked, and categorized. Investigators cross-referenced the files with missing person cases across 5 states: Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Arkansas. They were able to identify 7 women who had disappeared after meeting Alex online. 4 bodies were eventually recovered in shallow graves outside Austin and Houston. 3 women were still missing. Every single victim had been healthy, young, and had a desirable blood type. Every single one had been lured under the pretense of romance. But Alex hadn't been working alone. Through his phone records and financial transactions, investigators identified 3 accomplices. Darnell Booker was a surgical nurse who had been fired from a hospital in Dallas 2 years earlier for stealing medication. He was the one who performed the organ extractions. Yvette Lawson was a medical records clerk at a transplant center in Houston. She provided patient information and helped identify potential buyers, people on transplant waiting lists who were willing to pay for organs outside the legal system. Trey Sullivan was a logistics coordinator who transported the organs from the extraction sites to the buyers. He had connections across state lines and knew how to move illegal goods without being caught. All 3 were arrested within 2 weeks of Alex's capture. The investigation revealed that Alex was part of a much larger illegal organ trade network. Kidneys were being sold for $150,000 to $200,000 each. The buyers were wealthy individuals who were desperate for transplants and couldn't or wouldn't wait for legal donations. Some were dying and had been on waiting lists for years. Others simply didn't want to wait. The network operated across state lines, which made it a federal crime. And as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered connections to similar operations in Canada and Mexico. Mattie's case became part of a larger international trafficking investigation led by Interpol. What had started as one woman's search for justice had exposed an entire criminal enterprise. Alex Cobbs was charged with 7 counts of kidnapping, 4 counts of first-degree murder, organ trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and interstate trafficking. If convicted on all counts, he faced life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial began 6 months after his arrest. The prosecution's case was airtight. They presented Mattie's testimony, hospital records, digital evidence, and financial records. They brought in forensic experts who analyzed the medical tools found in Alex's apartment. They showed the jury the files from his laptop, photos of women he had targeted, messages he had sent, timelines he had created. They called families of the missing women to testify. Belle Washington's mother spoke about the last text her daughter sent before she disappeared. Shayna Mitchell's sister described the moment she realized her sister was never coming home. Tama Green's father broke down on the stand, unable to finish his statement. When it was Mattie's turn to testify, the courtroom went completely silent. She walked to the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Then she sat down and told her story. She described meeting Alex on the dating app. She described flying to Texas, believing she was meeting someone who cared about her. She described the wine, the dizziness, the collapse. She described waking up in the motel room with her kidney gone. She described the phone call where Alex admitted what he had done. And then she explained why she had spent nearly a year hunting him down. I survived by accident, she said, her voice steady. But I made sure Naomi Young survived on purpose. The courtroom remained silent. Even Alex's defense attorneys had no questions for her. Alex's defense team tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial. They claimed Alex had been framed. They suggested that Mattie was mentally unstable and had fabricated the entire story. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury saw the medical tools. They saw the files on the laptop. They heard the testimonies from multiple families. They saw the financial transactions. There was no reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Alex showed no emotion. He sat in his chair, staring straight ahead, his face blank. Mattie, sitting in the gallery, closed her eyes and exhaled for what felt like the first time in over a year. 3 weeks later, Alex appeared for sentencing. The courtroom was packed. Families of the victims filled the benches. Mattie sat in the front row. One by one, family members were given the opportunity to read impact statements. Belle Washington's mother stood and described the agony of not knowing what had happened to her daughter for over 2 years. Shayna Mitchell's sister talked about the guilt she felt for encouraging her sister to try online dating. Tama Green's father tried to speak but broke down halfway through and had to sit down. Then the judge invited Mattie to speak. She stood, her hands steady, her voice clear. "You told me you regretted keeping me alive," she said, looking directly at Alex. "But I don't regret surviving because my survival meant Naomi Young got to live. And every woman you plan to hurt after her is safe now. You lose, I win, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that the woman you tried to destroy is the reason you're in prison." Alex stared at her, his jaw clenched, but he said nothing. The judge sentenced Alex Cobbs to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His accomplices received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. As Alex was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he didn't look back. He didn't look at Mattie. He didn't look at the families. He just walked out and the door closed behind him. Outside the courthouse, Mattie was surrounded by reporters. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in her face. She declined most of the interview requests, but she made one statement, speaking directly into the camera. "If you're using online dating, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if someone asks too many questions about your health, walk away." Then she turned and walked away, leaving the cameras behind. But what Mattie and the world didn't know was that Alex was far from over yet. Before moving on, a quick thank you to everyone watching and supporting this channel. Your presence truly keeps it alive. This community continues to grow because of people who believe in real, meaningful storytelling. Becoming a channel member unlocks exclusive extras, behind-the-scenes content, and directly helps us bring more powerful true stories to light. Your support makes a real difference. And we'd love to know who's here. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. If you're still tuned in right now, write "I'm still here" in the comments. Let's see who's watching till the end. Don't forget to like this video, too. Now, let's continue. 6 months after his sentencing, Alex Cobbs was housed at a medium-security federal facility in Oklahoma. To the guards and staff, he appeared to be a model prisoner. He was quiet, compliant, never caused trouble. He followed the rules, participated in prison programs, and kept to himself. There were no incidents, no fights, no disciplinary reports. On paper, Alex looked like someone who had accepted his fate. But that was exactly what he wanted them to think. For 6 months, Alex had been planning. He studied the guard rotations, memorized their schedules, noted when security was most relaxed. He watched the cameras, figured out their blind spots, and mapped out every inch of the outdoor recreation yard. He knew which inmates could be bribed and which ones couldn't, and he knew exactly when to make his move. During outdoor recreation on a Tuesday afternoon, Alex staged a medical emergency. He was walking around the yard when he suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed to the ground. He gasped for air, his face contorted in pain, his body convulsing. Two guards rushed over immediately. They knelt beside him, calling for medical assistance over their radios. In the chaos, Alex struck. He pulled out a sharpened toothbrush he had been hiding in his waistband and stabbed the first guard in the side of the neck. The guard went down, clutching his throat, blood pouring through his fingers. The second guard reached for his weapon, but before he could draw it, another inmate, one Alex had been paying off for months, tackled him to the ground. Alex didn't waste time. He ran toward the perimeter fence. He had studied the fence for weeks. He knew the guards would sound the alarm within seconds, but he also knew he had a small window before they could mobilize. He reached the fence and grabbed the knotted bed sheets he had hidden in a laundry cart earlier that morning. He climbed quickly, his hands gripping the fabric, his feet finding purchase on the chain link. The alarm started blaring just as he reached the top. Sirens echoed across the prison yard. Guards shouted. But Alex was already over. He dropped to the other side, rolled to absorb the impact, and sprinted toward the tree. The prison went into immediate lockdown. Gates slammed shut. Guards flooded the yard. But Alex had a 12-minute head start, and 12 minutes was all he needed. Outside the fence, hidden in the tall grass, were civilian clothes, jeans, a hoodie, a baseball cap. An accomplice on the outside had stashed them there the night before. Alex changed quickly, stuffing his prison uniform into a trash bag and burying it under leaves. He pulled the cap low over his face and disappeared into the Oklahoma wilderness. Within an hour, the FBI issued a federal warrant. Alex Cobbs, convicted organ trafficker and murderer, was now a fugitive on the run. The media exploded with coverage. Every news channel ran the story. Organ harvesting killer escapes prison. Alex's mug shot was plastered across television screens. Hotlines were set up. Rewards were offered. The public was warned not to approach him. In Quebec, Mattie was sitting in her living room when she saw the breaking news alert on her phone. Her hands started shaking. She turned on the television and saw Alex's face staring back at her. The reporter was explaining how he had escaped, how a guard had been injured, how a massive manhunt was underway. Mattie felt like the world was collapsing around her. Everything she had fought for, everything she had survived for felt undone in an instant. She had spent a year tracking him. She had testified against him. She had watched him get sentenced to life in prison, and now he was free. The FBI called her within the hour. They assured her they would find him. They told her she was safe, that he had no reason to come after her. But Mattie didn't believe them. She knew Alex. She knew how his mind worked, and she knew he was capable of anything. Weeks passed with no solid leads. There were sightings reported across multiple states, but none of them were confirmed. Alex was using his network connections. Old accomplices who owed him favors, people who were still part of the illegal organ trade. They provided him with safe houses, fake documents, burner phones. He moved through Oklahoma, then Kansas, then Missouri. He traveled at night, avoided highways, stayed off cameras. He was always one step ahead. The FBI tracked his movements as best they could, but Alex knew how to disappear. He had done it before. 3 weeks into the manhunt, Alex made a mistake. He used a credit card linked to an old alias to buy gas at a rural station in Indiana. The transaction was flagged by the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Agents descended on the location within an hour, but Alex was already gone. They were 2 hours behind, but now they had his direction. He was heading east. A pattern emerged. Alex wasn't running away. He was running towards something or someone. The FBI realized what was happening. He was heading toward New York. He was going after Naomi Young, the woman who got away, the woman whose survival had led to his arrest. Naomi was placed in protective custody immediately. Federal agents moved her to a safe location and assigned round-clock security. She was terrified. She had thought it was over. She had thought she was safe. Now the man who had tried to kill her was out there hunting her again. Week 4 of the manhunt brought a break. A truck driver called the tip line and reported seeing a man matching Alex's description at a rest stop in Pennsylvania. The FBI set up roadblocks on all major highways heading toward New York. They coordinated with state police, local law enforcement, and the U.S. Marshals. They were closing in. Alex, desperate and running out of resources, broke into a hunting cabin in the Pocono Mountains. He stole food, camping gear, and a hunting rifle. He planned to hide out until he could figure out his next move. But the cabin owner returned unexpectedly and saw the broken window. He called the police immediately. By the time officers arrived, Alex had fled into the woods. U.S. Marshals joined the manhunt. Helicopters with thermal imaging swept the forest. Search teams combed through the trees. Alex hid in an abandoned minehaft for 2 days. He was exhausted, dehydrated, and hypothermic. He hadn't eaten in over 48 hours. His body was shutting down, but he refused to give up. He had come too far. He had risked too much. He wasn't going to let them take him again. On day 28 of the manhunt, a hiker spotted Alex emerging from the woods near the Delaware Water Gap. The hiker called 911 and within minutes, police surrounded the area. Alex saw the flashing lights. He heard the helicopters overhead. He knew he was trapped. He briefly considered using the stolen rifle. He could go out on his own terms, but as he looked at the dozens of officers closing in, weapons drawn, he realized it was over. He dropped the rifle and raised his hands. He surrendered without resistance. The media captured the entire arrest on camera. Alex was led away in handcuffs, looking gaunt, disheveled, and defeated. His escape had lasted 28 days, but it was over now. Mattie watched the arrest on live television. She saw Alex being loaded into a police car, his face blank, his body broken. For the first time in a month, she allowed herself to breathe. The FBI confirmed later that day that Alex had indeed been heading toward Naomi's last known location. His intent was clear. He had planned to finish what he started, but he had failed. This time, there would be no medium security facility, no recreation yard. No chance of escape. Alex Cobbs was transferred to ADX Florence, a supermax federal prison in Colorado. He would spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. No contact with other inmates, no windows, no possibility of escape. He would die there. And Mattie knew finally that it was truly over. Naomi Young moved forward with her life, but she never forgot what almost happened to her. She started a blog about online dating safety, sharing her story and warning other women about the dangers of meeting strangers without taking proper precautions. Her blog gained thousands of followers within months. Women reached out to her from all over the world, thanking her for speaking up, sharing their own close calls, asking for advice. Naomi partnered with organizations that educated women about trafficking and predatory behavior. She spoke at colleges, churches, and community centers. She told her story over and over, always ending with the same message. I'm alive because someone I never met refused to let me become another victim. She credited Mattie with giving her a second chance, and she made it her mission to make sure other women had that same chance. Mattie's case sparked national attention. News outlets covered the story for weeks. Documentaries were made. Podcasts dissected every detail, and with that attention came action. Legislators introduced new bills aimed at stricter regulations on organ transplant. Networks enhanced background checks for medical professionals, and increased penalties for organ trafficking. Some of the bills passed, others didn't. But the conversation had started. People were talking about the illegal organ trade in ways they never had before. Families of missing persons began pushing for their cases to be reopened. Law enforcement agencies started sharing information across state lines. The network that Alex had been part of was being dismantled piece by piece. It wasn't enough to bring back the women who had died, but it was something. Mattie returned to Quebec after the trial. She attended therapy regularly, working through the trauma that still woke her up at night. She reconnected with her family who had watched her disappear into the investigation for a year and were relieved to have her back. But Mattie knew she couldn't just go back to her old life. She couldn't sit at a desk analyzing data and pretend nothing had happened. So, she started a non-profit organization called the Second Chance Foundation. It was dedicated to helping survivors of trafficking and assault rebuild their lives. Mattie used her savings to rent a small office space. She hired a part-time counselor. She set up hotlines and resources. She reached out to other survivors and offered them a place where they would be heard, believed, and supported. The foundation grew slowly at first, but word spread. Women started showing up at her door, looking for help, looking for hope, and Mattie gave it to them. She didn't date. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The idea of trusting someone that way again felt impossible. But she was learning to trust in other ways. She trusted her family. She trusted her therapist. She trusted the women who came to her foundation and shared their stories. And slowly she was learning to trust herself again. To believe that what happened to her didn't define her. That she was more than a victim, that she had a purpose. On quiet days, Mattie would drive to the cemeteries where Belle Washington, Shayna Mitchell, and Tamika Green were buried. She would place flowers on their graves. She would whisper apologies for not finding Alex sooner, for not being able to save them. But she also whispered promises. She told them their deaths weren't in vain. She told them that because of what happened to them, other women were safe now. She told them they mattered. 2 years after waking up in that motel room, Mattie sat in her office at her foundation. A young woman sat across from her holding a cup of tea with shaking hands. She was 23 years old. She had been trafficked for 6 months before she escaped. She didn't know where to go or who to trust, but someone had given her Mattie's number. And now she was here telling her story, looking for help. Mattie listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just listened. And when the young woman finished, Mattie reached across the desk and took her hand. "You're safe now," Mattie said. "And we're going to help you rebuild, one step at a time." The young woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. Mattie smiled. "You don't have to thank me. You survived. That's what matters." At night, Mattie would look at the scar on her abdomen. It had faded over time, but it was still there. A permanent reminder of what she had lost, her kidney, her innocence, her ability to trust easily. But it was also a reminder of what she had gained. Strength, purpose, survival. She had turned her pain into something meaningful. She had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and used it to help others. And that meant something. One evening, Mattie's phone rang. It was Naomi. "I have news," Naomi said, her voice bright with excitement. "I got engaged." Mattie felt genuine happiness wash over her. "That's wonderful," she said. "You deserve every happiness." Naomi laughed. "I never thought I'd trust someone again, but I do, and it's because of you. You showed me that surviving means more than just being alive. It means living." That night, Mattie sat alone in her apartment, thinking about the promise she had made to herself 2 years ago. He will never touch another woman again. She had kept that promise. Alex Cobbs was locked away in a supermax prison, spending 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. He would never see daylight. He would never hurt another woman. He would die alone in that cell, forgotten by everyone except the people whose lives he had destroyed. And Mattie had made sure of it. She had discovered that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about making sure the life you saved, your own, means something. And Mattie's life meant something now. It meant hope for other survivors. It meant justice for the women who didn't make it. It meant that one person, armed with courage and refusal to be silenced, could change the world. Alex Cobbs is serving life at ADX Florence, a supermax federal prison in Colorado. He will never be eligible for parole. He will die in solitary confinement with no contact, no windows, and no hope of escape. His accomplices are behind bars, serving sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. Naomi Young is married now. She works as an advocate for trafficking survivors, speaking at events and educating women about online safety. Mattie Bright runs the Second Chance Foundation, helping survivors rebuild their lives one step at a time. She has one kidney, but she has something far more valuable: purpose. She has the knowledge that her pain saved a life, that her survival meant another woman got to live. Every year, thousands of people are trafficked for their organs. Most don't survive. Most don't get justice. But Mattie's story proves that one person armed with courage, persistence, and a refusal to be silenced can make a difference. If you're using online dating, remember this. Meet in public first. Tell someone where you're going. Trust your instincts. Never travel long distances to meet someone you've never met in person. Your safety is worth more than any connection. If this story moved you, if it opened your eyes, if it made you think twice about the dangers hiding behind a smile on a screen, share it. Share it with someone you love. Share it with someone who's looking for connection online. Because the next woman Alex Cobbs targets could be your sister, your friend, your daughter. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. Join this community of awareness, survival, and justice. Stories like Mattie don't just inform, they save lives. Your share, your comment, your voice could be the thing that keeps someone safe. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and never stop fighting.